Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Student of the Game. I am Kyle Nash, the Student of the Game. And listen, if you're here, chances are you like talking sport, and we are eternally grateful that you are here to do it with us. Busy day today. Coaching updates, people be acting a fool about this, that, and the other thing everywhere. The Jacksonville Jaguars parted ways with Trent Baalke after having no fewer than 3 coaching headlines out there take place. And I was all over the place. I can guarantee you that you do anything related to the Fans for Sports Network here right now in the next day or two, you can see something about my work with them regarding the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I haven't even had a chance to address whatever it was that happened there in Canada with the Orlando Magic battling Toronto Raptors. I'm probably not going to be able to get into that until tomorrow or after they do battle with the Portland Trailblazers here coming up tomorrow night. But anyways, we'll have, listen, there's a whole plenty of time next week to get into NBA, and I know there'll be a lot we're talking about there. I'm going to be trying to get my guy RJ Sanders in from Open Gym on 1010 XL over there in Jacksonville on board. Talk a little bit of hoop. That's going to all be a thing next week. And obviously, going to be talking plenty of football. Conference championship Sundays coming up. I have the Huddle, a podcast zone. The evil twin himself, Shawn Patrick, coming in to talk some stuff. Definitely want to give him an opportunity to sound off on his Eagles, how that all went, how Conference Championship Sunday may go, how he feels about Bills Chiefs, since he didn't get the opportunity to do so on Huddle Up, and then maybe we'll talk with him about his Irish and how that went for the national championship game, and any thoughts and feelings he has on that. Then I might just be inclined to talk a little bit about Trent Baalke and that whole situation afterward. But first, let's get into this. I have been incredibly vocal about people in general talking about the bias calls that Patrick LaVon Mahomes II and the Kansas City Chiefs get. And I'm not here to say calls are never missed in regards or in favor of one, Patrick LaVon Mahomes II. History and research tells us that league stars get calls, okay? Michael Jeffrey Jordan got calls. Ramon James, I think it is. I forget his middle name. He should have a middle name status on this show. So I'll give him a bell instead because I didn't remember it, right? But LeBron James is going to get calls. Michael Jeffrey Jordan got calls. All-time greats got calls. Thomas Edward Patrick Bieber Brady II got calls. These things happen. Did people complain about it afterward? There's a particular guy, Will Anderson, that said, oh, we knew it was going to be the refs. I haven't seen a fine for him or anything like that. If he did, I wouldn't be mad at it. He knows that the refs are going to be there, and he still tried to aim high and make a hit. Oh, okay, listen. I want to rehash everything I said on the Huddle Up podcast. But here's what's come of it lately that I'm forced to sound off. And it's rare you get the opportunities of somebody with a particular opinion. People will be like, oh, but Kyle, you're biased. You cover the Jacksonville Jaguars for Fans for Sports Network and the Duval Dive. Accurate. However, that doesn't make me incapable of pulling back any sort of bias. For one, I am not a card-carrying member of the Duval Devout. That's the whole reason why I have Travis T. Holmes on. Shout out to my co-host and personal champion. But the opportunity to demonstrate the lack of that bias is what I crave. First of all, everybody seems to forget I'm a 49ers fan. I like seeing D'Amico Ryans do good as a head coach. Whoops. But what I've heard happen to Joe Mixon is beyond stupidity. Let me put some context on it for you first. Let me bring him in to actually execute this quote that got him fined.
You can never leave it into the ref's hands. But I mean, the whole world see, man, like what it is, bro. But it is what it is. Like I said, when it comes down to it, you can't never leave it into the ref's hands, man, and things like that. But it's all good, though.
Now, when it comes to that particular statement, I don't think he said anything particularly derogatory towards an NFL official. The whole world saw it. Accurate statement. You can't leave it in the ref's hands. Damn fine statement, actually. Something perhaps the rest of his teammates and fanhood should embrace. You left it in the ref's hands because you let your guy get sacked 8 times and you made repeated special teams mistakes. But again, we're not trying to rehash what I said on the Huddle Up podcast. The dude said nothing there. Matter of fact, what he got fined for initially was something from a tweet from TJ Hushmanzada about 50-50 calls and the refs being trash. An actual direct, criticism. And listen, if you're here to expect me to argue in favor of NFL officials, boy howdy, you have not watched this show enough. But why did Joe Mixon exactly get fined there? I mean, the only other person that might actually, no, I can't even think of that. I know Mikey Byrne of Huddle Up agrees because he's a Bengals fan and Joe Mixon played for them in that Super Bowl he lost. But yeah, that was some unreasonable stupid. And anybody can. I know these are the little things you could do that really don't matter. But hey, take the 5 minutes, tweet at the NFL commish, at NFL commish, give Roger Goodell hell for this because this is asinine. Will it do nothing? Probably. But is it right in the name of sports justice? I certainly think so. Anyways, speaking of things that may or may not be just, I have had occasion finally to get this man on the show so the circle can be complete. So the entirety of the Huddle Up podcast panel, that's alliteration, folks, can make it onto the show. I'm just going to bring him in. This is a guy that's known his stuff well, has been a voice of reason, and even talked me off the ledge when I got loud about stuff, as I tend to do sometimes on Huddle Up podcast. It's probably EJ's fault, but nonetheless, let me stop building up. Let me just bring him in. The man they call Shawn Patrick on the Huddle Up podcast. What's going on, Shawn?
What's going on, Kyle? Glad to be here.
No, honor, joy, and privilege to have you in. It's good to hear those dulcet, low bass tones come through here, man. And listen, no jokes regarding fanhood or anything like that. We won't be talking college football too much beyond a little bit with the Natty. And I haven't had a chance to hear from you yet. You were unable to make the Huddle Up podcast such as it was Tuesday night because, hey, you did the right thing and watched the game. I know, right? As a Notre Dame person, but give me some of your thoughts from the game. Obviously, you didn't get the result you wanted, but I'll start it with this for you so we can focus on the positive. That opening drive on offense was worth the damn price of admission, and the alleged Notre Dame hater that I'm supposed to be loved every single minute of that drive. What say you, sir?
Well, I mean, the opening drive was exactly everything that needed to happen for 4 quarters. Unfortunately, it only went on for about half a quarter.
Yeah.
But it was one of those. The question mark after the drive was going to be, can they sustain it? It was. You saw just a dilapidated quarterback afterwards. The offense was gassed, and it was one of those scenarios where, if this defense does stand up to Ohio State, can you afford a 3 and out? That was my only fear going into it, was that if we made a quick stand, that maybe the next offensive stand was going to be something just real quick to get us a little field position and get out. But yeah, I mean, it showed that, with the preparation and some confidence that offense could move against Ohio State. And unfortunately, and I think Freeman summed it up pretty well at the half. They just had to start believing the moment shouldn't have been too big for them, but it kind of felt like it there for a while. And I think once the speed got behind them a little bit, I think there was kind of that element of like, this is a big game and a big team, and it kind of got off the rails a bit. But yeah, that first drive was something fun to watch.
Yeah, and I'm glad he mentioned the speed, because a point I had made the week before on the Huddle Up podcast, one we had neglected to mention Tuesday, but I wanted to give opportunity to hear people say that I said it. My direct statement in the process was the Notre Dame Fighting Irish will lose if, and I said, Ohio State gets more than 3 plays of 20 yards or greater. That most certainly happened, and I think that ties into that speed element you were talking about.
Well, yeah, and I think that it was one of those, like, the first drive kind of met everything that I had said. I think my prediction was if Notre Dame can run the ball, and if they're not
Yeah.
afraid to run with their quarterback, and if they can win the game of rushing. But then I also, Ohio State will lose. I believe I said if they lose the turnover battle. Now they actually did. I believe they Notre Dame forced that fumble late, and I mean, to be honest, if we could have gotten some points, even the 3 out of that drive after the fumble, I mean, you saw worry on the Ohio State side, and that's all I wanted in the fourth quarter. I I said I was gonna pray to a God. I figured the Catholics had that covered. I was like, I figured there's probably enough people praying at this point, down 28-7, and I said and so I turned on the next commercial break and I said, no, I'm gonna pray to the football gods that have made me miserable as a Philadelphia Eagles fan for years and as a Notre Dame fan for years, and the ball bounces one way and not the way it should, and it always ends up in a Steelers hand in the NFL, and whatever those football gods can do, I said, at least make this a game. And it was right. I can tell you the moment. There was 11 minutes and some odd seconds left, and the ESPN broadcast started talking about Ryan Day's winning percentage, and they started looking back at Ohio State's season, and they started comparing it to other. And I was like, this is what you do in the last 3 minutes of a broadcast. And there's 11 minutes to play in the third quarter. I mean, they had just peeled aside. They were baseball now. The game was playing. No one was calling it. And I was just like, for the love of everything, for Kirk Herbstreit and for Ryan Day and for everyone in Columbus, let this game be close. Like, give them something to shake things up and to worry about. And we got that. It became competitive, got down to a 1-score game. And at that moment, you saw some concern.
Yeah.
And then, like an idiot on the phone with my father, I said, they haven't even, I don't even know what they have dialed up. They haven't even had to go deep on a play.
Oh, boy.
And on the next snap, over the top play, which we held, gave up 3, but, it was a little too late. But, there's hope going forward, and, coordinators in tote or not, I think Freeman's going to keep the staff he wants that he can.
Yeah.
And, obviously there's a lot of folks that believe in him out there.
Yeah, one of the many coaching bits of news out there in the NFL today is of course, the Bengals retaining the Fighting Irish's defensive coordinator. I see what you referenced there. But yeah, I listen, I don't see a world where a guy necessarily prefers to coach away from Coach Freeman. I don't think that's a problem in particular there. And listen, this was a game that looked like that had an Irish team that was, as we've seen from Coach Freeman throughout these playoffs, was big enough for the moment. And let's give, I know it's tough for both you and the CEO of the Huddle Up podcast, Big Jim, to throw praise in the direction of Ryan Day, but he clearly grew in his approach and sticking to his team's strengths throughout the rest of the playoffs after losing to Michigan. So that much credit I will allow him.
Yeah, I mean, you didn't see a lot of change. It's not like, I mean, when the skill positions, it's hard to come in with a game plan that's poor when you have the weapons that Ohio State has. You have a dual threat quarterback. You have, all pro, NFL caliber running backs behind him. You have speed on the outside. I mean, that team, if that team had the tight end that Penn State had the week before, I don't even think Notre Dame gets back in it. But, yeah, I mean, credit to Ryan Day. I mean, he did, what he had to do. He brought the championship back to Columbus. And the one solace as a Notre Dame fan that I think you take out of it is.
You mean other than the money? Sorry.
Well, the money's nice. It'd be nice if they could send me a check for speaking on their behalf here.
That'd be nice.
But, just a little something, from South Bend, at least a ticket or something.
Okay.
But anyway, but I think as a Notre Dame fan, the big fear, was, and it's more history than what we saw this year. I don't think there was anything with Freeman or this team that led me to believe that we did not belong in the game. But history, you go back to Alabama, or you go back to other years we were close, or we win enough games to get to a New Year's Day bowl, even though we may not belong there. And you play a team from the SEC, or you play a team that's, was also challenging for a national title, and you just get embarrassed. you know, not to take away from the team that went to the national title game against Alabama. There was really no one else to put in that game. They did what they had to do to get there. But
Also
it was
had the benefit
clearly,
of no conference championship, but we don't need to rehash that.
it helped. Of course, that was you know, this year we had the unfortunate effect. We got hurt by not having a conference championship, apparently. So yeah, you know, it's
That's
like
fair.
darned if you do, darned if you don't. If you have one, they say you shouldn't. If you do have one, you know, if you don't, they say you should. Join a conference, don't join a conference. The point is
Yeah.
that Notre Dame showed up and they showed that they weren't out of their class and that this wasn't above them. You beat a Georgia team that, despite the losses, you know, you can say what you want about Texas, but I still, in my opinion, Georgia was the most talented team in the SEC, whether they had more losses or not. And I think they showed it in big games where other teams did not. And you had a Penn State team that was way, way better than I anticipated. You know, because they hadn't been particularly tested, and maybe we were their test, and they said some of the same things I'm about to say about this national title game, that, hey, we did belong there. And I think they did. And yeah, I think, you know, you showed that if you have your top 12 teams, Notre Dame not only belonged there, but probably has something to hang another season on and try to get back.
And here's the theory I come up with. Let me know what you think of it. 'Cause first of all, let me lead with this. I will not utter the statement that I think Notre Dame didn't belong. I don't think that's accurate, but here's how I get there. Notre Dame is what I'm going to refer to heretofore with college football playoffs such as they are. And since we've established that they award teams with lesser schedules, right? In Notre Dame's case this year, yes, they played 4 G5s. You and I have had this conversation on the Huddle podcast ad nauseum, right? They lost one of them. But at the end of the day, Shawn, they won their test. Was it week 1? Yeah. Was that kind of lame? Fine. But they still won it. And I'm never taking that away from them. Okay. Then they get to the playoff. They were the baseline team because they got better throughout the year, started beating up on teams. Granted, the schedule was weak, but they did what they were asked to do after that to crush teams that didn't matter. You know, I know people think they're cute talking about, well, they beat a conference champion. It was the American. Settle down. Okay. Although technically speaking, there was an American Athletic Conference team in the playoff. Oh, wait, SMU's with the ACC now. Anyways, I'm making jokes. Let me get on point. What Notre Dame did was take all these other teams that were trying to sell me, particularly in the Big Ten, playing no one and losing their one test in the form of Ohio State, the eventual national champions. I'm sure that's something all of them will hang their hats on, and it'll have them all coming back in the preseason rankings next year. However, here's the thing, Shawn. They had one test. Okay, this is Notre Dame. Everybody, including the student of the game, has told you you should be able to beat this team if you're as good as you think you are. And none of them did it. And even in the case of Georgia, Notre Dame did their job there too. They were a team without their starting quarterback, just like FSU was when they were correctly left out of the playoff. Right. Notre Dame instead was the equalizer that took that team out of play. But Kyle, what about Carnell Jones? Hey, Carnell Jones was tested in a conference championship game, and then got there and won the whole damn thing. That's being tested. Okay. Do you agree with this concept I'm building of Notre Dame as the baseline team? If you can't beat them, you didn't belong there anyway yourself.
Well, I mean, the trouble is as you're working your way through a playoff is whether, you know, you can't say it didn't belong there because you don't know, you know, as a base level. I mean, if Notre Dame wants to be the quote golden standard, I mean, that's you know,
I like that.
Yeah, it's not too bad. Shame to lose a coordinator named Golden too. Anyway, but it's
you know
perfect place.
You know? Yeah,
could have just brought in Golden Tate as a wide receivers coach. Would have been perfect.
Maybe he has a son. I don't know.
They're probably going to play for the Irish, but you know, you get if you want to call us the golden standard. I mean, that's fine. I
this
mean,
year
I think
you certainly seem to be right.
Yeah, I mean, it's a team that I think is. You know, when you talk about track records and who they had to play, and like, yeah, there's an asterisk with a Georgia quarterback. Now, given there's no quarterback being recruited to Georgia that is incapable of playing a college football game, I think that I mean, you're essentially like NFL B You know, when you're at Georgia, it's a team full of NFL prospects. So it's not like the kid can't play.
And Gunnar
But,
Stockton is just a great name. Can we just
it's a good one. It's real good. You know, and it's, you know, it's you know, people are going to talk about the schedule this year, and I mean the trouble is, and I'm not here to debate scheduling or G5s or anything else.
Sure.
I'm here because but I've talked about it before, and you know, when you're making these schedules, especially in Notre Dame's case, the half of the games that come from the ACC, you really don't have a say in it, and of course they had amped up. You know, they do it a few years out. We know who's coming in the next few years, and a few years ago, a late season matchup with Florida State looked tremendous. You know, it looked like a tremendous matchup. Turns out, not so much. And there's only so much you can do. But whatever got scheduled, you know, there is a fact that Notre Dame did set an NCAA record this year for most consecutive months beating a top 25 team. Whether you agree that some of those teams belonged in the top 25 at the time or not. Let's call them top 35 teams. But whatever the case is, every month of the season from August until now, they have at least beaten a top 25 ranked team at some point in the month. And that's, you know, it's impressive for a schedule that's thrown together years before to even assume that some of those teams are all going to be there at some point is pretty wild. And Notre Dame has never shied away from, be it a few years out, trying to schedule big names, you know, trying to get big schools, little 2-year deals, 3-4 year deals, things like that. So I think the schedule is gonna ramp up, and they do have a little more control on it. So I think if they hear a lot about it and they believe in the state of the team, that they'll try to amp it up a little more. But you also don't want to amp it up too much because, like you said, you know, including a coach that called Notre Dame out for not being in a conference. Sometimes a conference schedule doesn't include all of the best teams in the conference, you know, like the Nittany Lions benefited from this year. I mean, you had a game against Ohio State. That was your Big Ten test. You failed that. You know, did you catch an Indiana team? Yeah, I don't even know if they played Indiana. I feel like that was Indiana's second loss, though. I feel like that was
Indiana's second loss.
Yeah.
Correct.
So you get past Indiana, but then Indiana gets in, and like, do they belong there?
No, excuse me. Well, Indiana's second would have been the conference championship. I forget now, right? But no, it wouldn't. I'm sorry, I got that wrong. Indiana only had one loss going into the playoff. Their second loss was Notre Dame, is what I meant to say.
Okay, all right. So Indiana had lost. I don't even know if they played Ohio State. They lost.
They did lose to Ohio State, I believe.
Okay, so that was their one. So Penn State didn't even play them then. So it's just like, you know, kind of one of those scenarios where, you know, you avoid an Oregon, you avoid a Michigan, you avoid some of these other Big Ten schools. And next year I hear they avoid a few of them again. So I don't know, you know, whether it's Alabama catching a few slides in the SEC, Texas also not playing everyone in the SEC. These conferences are so big now that, like, you can't play an 11-game schedule or 12-game schedule and get every one of the good teams. And if you do, it's incredibly unfair. So it's in or out. Teams are going to have bad weeks, bad teams on their schedule, and you just got to get through them, and you got to muscle through them. Fortunately, Notre Dame was able to overcome the one they didn't, and by doing that the rest of the way, and you know, here we stand. So, you know, number 2 in the country, not too shabby. Let's build on that. Let's not make it a one-hit wonder.
Yeah, no, I listen, man, there's a lot of facts you're preaching there too. And yeah, I did have it right. They only lost to Ohio State. They didn't even play Penn State.
That's what I thought. I was debating whether Penn State had even played them.
They had not. I double checked for clarity. They even got blasted by they did get past a Washington team. That's cute. But to your point, that's one of those things where, the schedule looked better before. I understand that aspect.
It's hard. Yeah.
Here's the thing, and I'm going to do this devil's advocate. I know in the past I've been critical of Notre Dame's schedule building choices, but here's the thing: considering the fact that they're out of a conference and it keeps them from getting a bye in the first place, what the hell's the fiscal incentive to actually play a better schedule? And all you have to do is say, the ACC blows. That's not our fault. And by the way, tradition, you know, That's the card you played on me before. And it's not a bad card because for all the tradition we've lost in college football, people are starving more for it than ever before. Who better than Notre Dame to deliver it?
Well, and that's why going into the week before the semifinals, I was saying I didn't think it was going to happen. It turned out to get closer. I thought, like, not that Ohio State's not a historic team.
Sure.
I just thought, like, of cities where, like, there's that the traditional pageantry and, like, the big, like, the state of Texas is a level of pageantry and history that has been missing. I think, like, the University of Texas, it's nice to have a resurgence because it's one of those historical teams and a great football state and a lot of history there and a lot of kids to recruit. So to have a successful Texas team in the SEC instead of the ones they've tried before could potentially bring a lot of those kids to the national TV market, could keep Texas strong, and run the Longhorns out there. I mean, I think it's good for college football if they're competitive, just like it's good if Notre Dame is as well.
Just so long as somebody's in the vicinity, right? Texas. I mean, with TCU, they've been around. Texas A&M, Texas Tech. Now SMU made a playoff. Right?
SMU making a push would be exciting because you talk history. That's history that might be too far behind a lot of the current college football viewers. A lot of the young folk don't realize how important to college football that SMU program was from a historical perspective. They had a lot of great teams. Notre Dame had the Catholics and SMU had the Methodists. And it was it's cool to see them in tote and are they ready to go join an SEC or a Big Ten? Heavens no. But they seem to be at a point where if they hold their ground and they stick in the conference they're in, they could be a thorn in people's side for several years here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Great segment, man. I didn't expect to go about almost 30 minutes on this, but that was good. But you left the door open for an excellent transition into talking about your Eagles. And I think it's adorable that you feel the need to pray to the sports gods as an Eagles fan, whereas a 49ers fan, we had to go down 4 quarterbacks and then get another guy hurt for you to sneak into that Super Bowl I was at.
Oh, stop whining.
No, joking aside.
If you would have just game planned for 4 quarterbacks, you guys have been fine. You didn't do enough work.
Well, there was 4 quarterbacks. It was that 5th one that was the problem.
It really struggled, yeah.
Look, hey man, look at that game.
Kyle just check at QB. No one knows who was playing.
Yeah, allegedly it was McCaffrey, but who knows? I said they were all getting different. Who the hell wants to? Anyways, no. That's silliness aside. Listen, man, and I have said this of the Eagles too, that I feel like once again they're kind of that baseline team. I don't know what my problem is, and I'm specifically here to help you point it out to me because I know you are very fond of telling me how wrong I am when I'm wrong about something. Sure, I'm not EJ Christian, but hey, listen, we all have limits, okay? I've never been that wrong. So
if you don't know what your problem is, I'd be happy to make you a list over the next 6 days or so to get on the next pod. Just make a list of what's wrong.
I'm glad you kept that ish under a month. There we go.
Yeah.
So with all that being said, here's where I struggle with the Eagles in particular. I don't even know why I feel this way at this point, okay? But I struggle thinking to myself that the Eagles are a championship team. Now, do I feel that way about the Commanders? No, obviously not. This isn't Mark Rippon, and nobody took them seriously until they got there against the Bills. Anyway, until they were leading against the Bills in the Super Bowl, nobody saw that coming, okay? But them, granted, I feel like I'm not going to just straight up say they had kind of an easier road, but they kind of had an easier road. The Packers aren't ready for that stage yet. I don't think they're too young a team. The Rams, I mean, here's the thing. The weather in Philly, you're going to beat a team that's coming into town that has surfers that say bruh as their home fan base, okay? You're going to win that game. Now, granted, they made it closer than anybody thought, but 2 turnovers was in direct conflict because of the snow, and the Eagles handled business. Taking nothing from Saquon being great, if only we knew a Giants fan that we can mock about it. The punchline's this. Tell me why this Eagles team is a championship team. Because to me, I don't think we'll see evidence of it this weekend. I think the Eagles are going to dominate. Spoiler alert. What do you say?
Well, I mean, from a easy road standpoint, I think that's a mild stretch. As far as what's wrong with you, like the same thing noted, the baseline thing. I'm noticing a pattern, being that you face
Almost as if I thought about this before you came on, as if you'd be able to answer to these
you
things.
join a panel with at least 2 Eagles fans on a regular basis. You join a panel with 2 to 3 Notre Dame fans on a regular basis, and you, sir, enjoy being a villain. So you immediately take, or at the very least, you enjoy being a devil's advocate.
I take
so
umbrage with the term villain, but continue.
Yeah, okay. So I think you just build it in your mind. You're like, well, I don't have to support them because I have other people that will, and I need to find a reason to tear those people down because it's more fun for the situation. And it is. I'm not going to take anything away from the.
I mean, that's fine delegation by me,
but it may block your brain from seeing that one. There is no easy road in the NFL that results in only 2 losses. So while the last 2 games in the playoffs may have been a mildly easy road, you could argue that the Washington Commanders got to play a Detroit team that has no defense left.
Absolutely. Great point.
You can make, it's not like the Commanders had an extremely tough road. It's not like the Chiefs have had an overly tough road. Sometimes that's just where being at the top of the playoff rankings helps you, because you get to draw those teams. Sometimes it hurts you because a very talented team sneaks in as a wild card, much like it seems to have done for anyone that ran into the Washington Commanders. But sometimes you get the kind of beat up, wounded team that had a chance to challenge for a division and kind of just stumbled down to a wild card spot, and that's what happens. But I think throughout the regular season, I think the Eagles had a tremendously tough schedule. Was it as tough as it looked at the beginning of the year? No, because I don't think anybody saw just how far Dallas would fall, but nobody saw how high Washington would rise either. We had to split a pair of games with them, and the other divisions we played. You had a couple tough games, and in the NFC South, I think we caught the Panthers at a good time for them, a tough time for us, but we got through them pretty handedly. And of course, Tampa got us again.
I mean, let's
whether or not that's the case, I mean, to come through that with the second best record in the conference in what is a very, as opposed to the AFC, I feel there's a lot more parity in the NFC, and so there's a lot of very good teams that could knock you off any week. So it's very hard to have what I would call an easy road through the NFC, but we got there. I as far as a championship caliber team, I mean, if you talk to any NFL historians, NFL people who cover the NFL, if you want a recipe for winning a championship, I mean, it comes down to those 3 words that have become very famous. Defense wins championships. And when you have the number 1 ranked defense in the NFL, when you've allowed, in the top 5 in pass touchdowns allowed, you're in the top 5 in rushing yards allowed, you're in the top 5 in scoring defense, you're 1 or 2 in turnovers. These are things that, like, whether you have weapons on the offensive side of the ball or not, you're going to be able to challenge for things. You can ask Trent Dilfer. And, to have that kind of skill on that side of the ball, despite losing guys, despite losing Huff and him clearly never being able to come back, despite losing Brandon Graham in the first third of the season, despite losing Nakobe Dean early in the playoffs, like, next man up, just, that rotation that they have, it's just, hey, we're going to need a little more game time. And they do it. But to have a guy like Saquon Barkley on the other side and an offensive line that, I mean, you could argue, week to week might be the best one in the NFL.
Which is funny because for all they've lost, they're still that good. That's
yeah. And the offensive line has 5 guys that all received All-Pro votes. I don't know the last time we had that happen. And let's be serious here, and maybe a little more on this later. The one kind of surprise factor I think the Eagles have, that the people talking about the passing game like it's, well, they haven't had to throw, or they're not throwing, or like AJ Brown this, 1 catch here, reading a book there, like whatever the situation is, there's a lot of talent in that passing game.
Yes.
And it's a passing game that probably has plays drawn up that they haven't even had to call yet through the playoffs because they haven't needed them.
That's a great point.
So if the championship game or the Super Bowl were to call for that, you may have things drawn up that the other sideline hasn't even seen because you just haven't had to pull it out of your arsenal because you have a guy that wants to rush for 205 yards.
Let me throw this in play. For one, yeah, okay. Here's the thing. The Packers game and the Falcons game, I think, are kind of a parody of where the best part, I shouldn't say the best part, but the two of the best teams on your schedule would be. Yeah, I know you played the Ravens too and won that football game. And that's certainly the top win of the schedule. But let's not go too crazy and act like the Saints, Carolina playing the Giants twice and the Titans and Jags and the AFC South was anything that was difficult. That being said, the part that actually impresses me the most for all my questions I have about the Eagles, we talked about that passing game, and the reason why they're probably not getting the love they aren't is because how long and how much they were hurt at the beginning of the year, and yet the Eagles were still stacking wins. To me, I think it's that very balance that makes them really good, and this defense is one of the more quieter defenses in general. Yeah, they're number one. I still don't hear the Eagles defense getting talked about enough for a number one defense. So perhaps the problem is their PR and the timing of that pass.
It's baffling, I think, in the sense. Now, I don't know what Mitchell looks like here for the NFC title game, but
right.
Obviously banged up in the last one. But everybody wants to talk about how a rookie's leading the Washington Commanders and a rookie's leading, putting on this tremendous season. And I'm not going to take anything away from Jaden Daniels. If there's one thing to be worried about this week, it's him, because he's arguably the most talented rookie quarterback I've ever seen. Like, as far as a results standpoint, I've never seen anything like this in a first year.
Yeah.
But the fact that the Eagles have so many rookie pieces, including two starting cornerbacks, one plays nickel, but they play most of their game in nickel because of that. So, to have, those young pieces play as effectively as they have, I think the two combined for less than 5 touchdowns allowed in coverage. So, I mean, that's something that, defense isn't as fun to talk about until, it's right after a dominant win. You might say, oh, well, they held this star that to this many yards. They'll put it in like a referenceable thing. But I think from a base level fan standpoint, it's hard to understand what makes a cornerback dominant and what that entails. So it's not as fun to sell as someone throwing for 5 touchdowns, no interceptions, that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, I think that's a solid take. By the way, the last team at late in the playoffs that I heard about playing this many rookies with success was a team that won the Super Bowl 2 years ago that I was covering in the Kansas City Chiefs. Interesting how you're on your way there as an Eagles fan, seeing that happen with the opportunity to potentially reverse destiny. A now veteran Karlaftis instead of a young one will be what you're potentially facing if they handle business against the Bills.
It would be nice to have that opportunity.
There you go. So, well, I mean, you mentioned being worried about Jaden Daniels with the Commanders. Obviously, he's a big deal. I get it. Perhaps the best rookie since RG3. Interesting enough. Certainly within that franchise, or maybe even an Andrew Luck or a Russell Carrington Wilson. Sure. I'm going back, over a decade, nearly a decade and a half to that 2012 class. And I mentioned all three of those cats. He's impressive. Scary Terry's legit. Their running game's a good balance. Their O-line, probably their weakness. Part of why I feel like Jaden Daniels will at least,
which will make this week tough.
Yeah. I nothing gets me excited about the Commander defense. And you have that offense at the end of the day. And no matter how I feel about it, or perhaps maybe it was just a good setup for an excellent segment with you. But all that being said, I just don't feel like the Red Tails, have enough. I know on Tuesday we were talking about 5.5 or 6 being the number. And I comfortably picked the Eagles to cover, and I put them at, I put the game at the under, I believe, or excuse me, the over. But that's probably the tougher one. To me, the easiest bet without question felt like the Eagles covering. So that's kind of where I sit. I don't necessarily have you pick the spread. I just do the money line pick, but I like mentioning what I think the easiest bet is. Do you fall in that same line? I mean, I'm assuming you're taking the Eagles. Pardon my fandom, right? But for you, do you feel like the Eagles covering is the easiest bet for this game?
I mean, fan or no fan, less than a touchdown is, I don't want to say insulting to an Eagles team, but I think a lot of that, when they're setting that spread, when what Jaden Daniels did to take down the proverbial powerhouse and Dan Campbell and the Lions, and doing that on primetime television, there are a lot of folks. Now, I'm not in the Philly area, so I don't know if anyone's worried there. But I know here, like, just from the kids I teach to like people around here to like sports broadcasts here in Tampa, like there's a lot of like neutral people from this game that just are like all on the Commanders now. Like it's like, well, like, this is the team that's going to beat Philly, because like, you're right, Philly hasn't done anything flashy, and it hasn't been AJ Brown, and it hasn't been Jalen Hurts, and it's just been like good push around, in the trenches football, and it's not as flashy, and I think Jaden Daniels is the hot ticket right now. And because of that, I feel like keeping the spread down helps Vegas because the bets will fly on the other side. So I think come game time, you may see the smarter football plays and the last minute big number bets push that Eagles number a little higher. So I think, yeah, if you're going to get it at 6 points, I would say throw it down now. Drain your account, put it on the Eagles. But yeah, if you're willing to bet a money line bet, I mean, it's like you said. I mean, Jaden Daniels has worked magic, but let's not really. And people are like, oh, he even beat the Eagles, because that's what the kids in my school that I teach told me. They're like, oh, he beat the Eagles earlier this year. I'm like, well, let's not forget,
Yeah.
he also had a game where he threw 5 interceptions.
Oh, what even that? They had Kenny Pickett at quarterback, homie. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, so I mean, it wasn't, and it's the full strength game, or the closest to it we had against him. It was his worst game on a turnover standpoint, was 5 interceptions. So
Yeah,
I'm sure he remembers that.
Yeah, yeah.
But Jaden Daniels, real good. And I was listening to an interview with someone's interviewing Tom Brady. They were talking to him, and he was talking about Jaden Daniels, and I liked what he said. Where especially for a young guy like Jaden, there's quarterbacks that are productive, or they have production, and from that build confidence.
Yeah.
And then there's quarterbacks like Jaden Daniels who seem to just have that confidence, and from it breeds productivity and production. And so I was like, that's why, as far as the comparisons, like I might pull from an RG3 and lean more towards an Andrew Luck when you were drawing some comparisons there, just because he compares very well to someone who's like, I can do this whether you believe it or not, and I'm going to show you. And when it doesn't work, I mean, even the game he threw 5 interceptions against us, he didn't look like the lack of production had affected his poise. It just, we had his number, and so that's the thing that tells me Washington pulled the right one out of the hat this year, because somebody who's able to just keep playing through adversity at the same level that he started is at that age is very, very unfounded.
It was the first big division game too, because the Cowboys are what they are. Sorry, EJ and Jim.
Jeez.
But and the Giants are what they are. Shouts to my friend, the Fey Princess of Football, Danielle Orsino, who will come on this show and rep for the Giants every now and again. But the Eagles were the first real divisional matchup, I feel like, that Jaden Daniels had to face, and there was a struggle. It is what it is. Right. I'll say, and I like the point you make. It's not only that he has poise and he already believes when he steps on the field. I think there's that short memory element too. Well, yeah, that happened.
Which a lot of young guys don't bring with them. Heck, a lot of old guys don't bring that with them.
Yeah, no, it's true. And some of them fuel on that passion, where there's sometimes you just fuel on belief, and you're out there actually having fun playing football. I know, right? So, no, I think there's a lot there. Too.
But roster-wise, like you said, beyond him, and McLaurin, I mean, obviously, the Eagles secondary is going to be keying on him, so someone else is going to have to come through. And is it going to be our old friend Zach Ertz? I sure hope not.
That would be funny, but I don't think so either.
Excruciating, but we have linebackers that play incredibly well in coverage, and is Zach Ertz going to catch a bunch of balls? I would think so. And if you're controlling the Commanders, I would hope so. that he's going to be the safety valve is going to be a thing. I think the guy the Eagles are going to have to corral is probably like an Austin Eckler.
Yeah.
I think you're going to have to make sure you control Brian Robinson between the tackles. But as far as a guy out in space, if McLaurin's not working, a guy like Austin Eckler out of the backfield could be tough. Depending who's playing defense for you. But I just I would argue that pound for pound, whether you like the Ravens, Bills, Chiefs, who you like, if you even the Lions, I would say preseason healthy. The Eagles have as deep of a roster as anyone in the NFL, arguably the best from a talent perspective. And the Commanders, as far as the 16 teams that come in, if you were list them by talent and depth, they'd have been in the bottom 4. I don't see much else, and if McLaurin goes down, or heaven forbid, even a Brian Robinson, if he goes down, can Eckler carry a load? Sure. But can he carry it as well as the two of them together? No. And it changes your whole game plan. Whereas the Eagles have about 4 different game plans, depending who's hot and what they give them. And every one of them has a Pro Bowler in it. So I just, I think offensively, the Eagles just have a lot of options. Whereas the Commanders are like, well, it's this option, or, go do something cool, Jaden, so, and I think he's capable. I'm not going to take that away from him.
He's done plenty of cool-ish. There's
the game plan is, Jaden, we can't figure it out. Call out the line of scrimmage.
The irony is your team is the benefactor of a guy who used to live that life in New York. For a fact the plan there in New York was, hey, give it the ball to Saquon. This.
Just give it to him.
Let me jump over to the other game there too, since
give him the ball, but not the money. Right.
How'd that go for you? Let's touch real quick too. Bills Chiefs. Now, I'm still convinced personally, somehow, don't ask me how, that the better game to watch still was the one we saw last week, regardless of what happened with Lamar Demetrius Jackson and Mark Andrews and all that, and the way that game ended. Any of that, it's horrid. It blows my mind that people are finding a way to blame Todd Monken for the drop, but whatever. Punchline's this. I don't know what it is. Listen, on this very show with Mike Byrne, I did the NFL awards. I had the defensive player of the year, Chris Jones. I've said throughout the year that Chris Jones is the Chiefs MVP, but you still don't bet against Patrick LaVon Mahomes II. However, I don't know what it is. I think the Bills win this game. Help me.
It's hard because I think when you're putting your heart into it and your gut, and you're like, what does the tape show me? I think you're right. It's just you're the reels and the coverages and everything that you've seen throughout the year. You're like, this can't be the Chiefs game, right? This has to be the one that Josh Allen finally pushes through. Which, by the way, if he does and the Eagles win, now my playoff prediction show, I had the Ravens I did one bracket, and it was the Ravens versus the Eagles. But my preseason prediction on the Huddle Up podcast, while there were a lot of mistakes, including a Cowboys win over the 49ers in the first round.
I listen, zero judgment from me.
But my final 4 did not include the Commanders, but it included the other 3, and I have the Bills playing the Eagles in the Super Bowl in my preseason bracket. So would I toot my own horn a little bit if that happens? Sure. But I'm with you because you can talk. There's 3 pieces. You name 2 of them. There's Chris Jones, there's Pat Mahomes, and there's a big fellow on the sidelines with one heck of a mustache that if I'm going into a game like this, I want him on my sideline. And, to have it, again, it's a home game for the Chiefs. Yeah, I mean, if you're asking me to drain my account, put it on a team on the money line, I don't think I can take the Bills. I feel like I'm kind of on the other side of that fence.
I don't blame you, kid. Listen,
it's I'll go. Maybe it's the history thing, just like college football, but and until somebody proves it otherwise, that's the team to beat. And I think they also have some tricks in their book you haven't seen yet. They've been in some tougher games, and some weird games, but I alluded before the playoffs, having a guy like Hollywood Brown that I don't think we've seen a lot of stuff dialed up for him yet. To have him opposite DeAndre Hopkins, to have Andy Reid always has something in his back pocket. And I'm sure
Yeah.
all of those guys have a few plays that in a pinch they can run. So, yeah, I mean, it is what it is. And you can blame it on referees or penalties, and maybe there's some truth to that, but I don't think it's near as big as people think it is.
Correct, which it's great to hear that from an Eagles fan, especially after all the whining that took place after
Because
that
there's some
Super Bowl.
questionable calls here and there and those things, but like for the
Mhm.
people that are posting, like, here's the penalties against the Chiefs in the playoffs, and here's the penalties against their opponents in the playoffs. I said, well, and I'm saying, well, sure, are there a bad call here or there? Maybe. I was like, but could we just chalk some of that up to a very well coached, well conditioned, Pro Bowl caliber team on both sides of the ball that doesn't commit as many penalties? Like, can we just chalk that up? That the stupid penalties like false starts and offsides don't happen, that the stupid penalties like holding in the defensive backfield don't happen as much, or at least they're conditioned enough to know when to get away with that stuff. And that's part of the game. And sometimes you don't know that, or you have a young player, or you accidentally slap someone in the face while you're colliding with your teammate above them, which I've watched the replay on that and I've read the rule book. And while it doesn't look like roughing the passer to me, when you look at the rule as it's written and you look at the hit that Pat Mahomes takes one in the noggin, once it was called, you couldn't take it away.
Yeah.
And that's just the way it is.
Well, and golly jeepers, maybe, I don't know, not let your quarterback get sacked 8 times. Maybe, I don't know, not ask a tight end to block Karlaftis for the third time in the game when he already has 2 sacks. Maybe do that. How about that? Can we do that?
And when you're the team to beat, teams come out, they're nervous to play there. The home crowd is tough. So in the playoffs, you're in Arrowhead. It's loud. It's cold.
Sure.
You're going to have offsides penalties that the Chiefs may not falter on because they're used to playing in it, and the crowd is in their court. So to take a look at like here and there, like how many penalties are called, that could just be a better team.
And that's part of it too. I think, and it's funny. I heard Colin Cowherd say, people used to talk about Michael Jeffrey Jordan getting the calls, which he did, surely. But at day's end, how many free throws did you miss? How many turnovers did you have? And if you're up in there with like 18 or 20 mistakes, the refs are allowed 1 or 2. And at some point, you do have to look at yourself. And taking it back to what Mixon said at the intro here, you can't leave it in the ref's hands. But I think the element here, the last thing I like to mention when it comes to the Bills is their defensive tackle core is perhaps the most underrated in the league. Say what you will about me calling for, Chris Jones to have the Defensive Player of the Year award. It won't happen. But the Buffalo Bills are sneaky good at defensive tackle, and they might be the first real challenge that they face. I should say face again because it'll be an Arrowhead, and they played over at the former Ralph Wilson Stadium before earlier in the year when the Bills won. But, Creed Humphrey and those 2 guards are an excellent internal line trio. That's going to be the matchup for the Chiefs that starts and ends everything. So I think that's an element that just isn't getting talked about enough, just like it wasn't getting talked enough about for the Eagles Super Bowl 2 years ago, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's from a defensive standpoint, the defensive front of the Chiefs is clearly
both sides have a pretty
one
good
of the league's best. But the Buffalo Bills, that's their strength. And so to me, because I have a lot of questions in the Buffalo Bills coming into the game and into these couple games, I have questions on their defense. As a defensive team, I feel like it has underperformed, from what the expectation is. And Josh Allen has had to win some games that he probably shouldn't. And it's been a slippery slope as far as points against the Buffalo Bills, where if things start to go poorly or that defensive front isn't getting the pressure that they need to and those tackles are being neutralized, it seems that those points pile up rather quickly. They've had to win some real heavy shootouts. So I think that the key for the Bills, especially in a hostile environment, is going to be to win that battle. And you're going to have to get to Mahomes some. Is it going to draw some penalties? Some people think so. But but whatever the case is, you can't be afraid of that. You can't be afraid of the officials. You have to play your game. You have to get back there. You got to take Pacheco and whoever else is taking the ball out of the game. and it's got to be quick because they obviously have some check down guys. I mean, you have a Kelsey, you have some slot guys, Xavier Worthy that you can drop the ball over the top to.
Yep.
But you want to make sure that like you're limiting the Chiefs scoring, and if you're not, can Josh Allen win a shootout? Sure, but you're going to have to do it against one of the better defenses you've played against.
Yeah. Can you keep points down, and can the Bills let James cook against that Kansas City Chiefs defensive front, which is awesome to keep Mahomes off the field? Certainly a big part of it. Seeing this particular spread, according to ESPN Bet, the Chiefs are -2. First of all, the real advice, don't bet this game.
No,
Just
-2 is like that's a Bills by 1.
Yeah, essentially, right. And
Good Lord.
I in taking the Bills to win this game, I technically have the bigger cushion, right? But the 47.5 is a great number. I'm still going to take a slight under. And if you're going to degenerate this game, which is insist on betting it, even though we told you not to, I think the under is the play at 47.5. What say you?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen a weather forecast. I haven't heard anything about major snowstorms or anything in either game, so I assume it's just going to be cold. I would, yeah, it's cold and defenses are good. Again, I would not actually touch this because while my heart is with you and says under, could I see a scenario where the Chiefs start hanging up a few points and the Bills have to get into a shootout and it just goes over by 15 points? Like, okay. Like, it's not out of the realm of possibility. I think, well, and I think some of it is both these teams are very volatile and they're both very unpredictable. And you're trying to like look at the season and go, well, which team is it? Is this the Buffalo team that shuts down Lamar Jackson and the Ravens? Is this the Buffalo team that gives up 48 points to Jared Goff? Is this the Buffalo team that like struggles to score and can't find a run game? Is this the one where Josh Allen throws 5 touchdowns? And you can say the same thing about the Chiefs. Is this the historical Chiefs? Is this like the we're going to take control at home Chiefs, or is this the like we're going to struggle against the Texans Chiefs? Like who are we seeing? So I think that there's a lot of risk at play. I personally, and the fact that if you want to be a degenerate and touch the actual spread, the fact that you're like, well, the Bills gives me extra cushion. I'm here going, well, only 2 at home. That's like getting a point. Like you give me Andy Reid at home with less than a field goal, I take that every time, but not this time. Don't do it. EJ, I'm looking at you. Don't.
Yeah, after he went, what was it, 1-4 this past week? Good Christ.
Well, he sat there a week or two ago bragging about 5-0 or something, and one of his like.
Yeah, well, we knew it was
what
trash.
You get. That's what you get.
Let's not even take it there. But no, yeah, man, I think a lot of those are a lot of good takes. A lot of good takes throughout the night.
If you bet this game and lose, you earned it.
Yeah, I mean, I've been out of work for 14 months. Help a brother out instead of doing that. I'm just saying.
Right. Send a check.
Exactly. Shawn, tell the world where you can be found, my man.
Well, I can't be found too many places yet, but I can be found on the Twitter. You can find me at Shawn Shine State, down here in the Shawn Shine State. Yeah, it's just, hey, much appreciated. Took me some time, 4 seconds, I think. But anyway, you can find me there this Sunday. You can find me in front of a television, as there's going to be a couple of good games coming on. So, go Birds. Let's just have some good football, preferably the good game a little bit later. I'll take a one-sided affair in the first one. So keep the old ticker in tote until 2 weeks from now. But
there you go.
But yeah, you can follow me there. You can also find me sometimes here now on the Student of the Game, but also on Huddle Up Podcast. You can catch me over there as well.
Well, we have a little project, too, that could involve you more often than not. Also here coming to Huddle Up pretty soon. Something that's pretty soon to come off the shelf.
Shelf.
Yes, indeed. I'm teasing. This is what that is. So anyway.
Keep your eyes. We got a couple teasers coming. Got that coming. You also have something, a little bit of a Shawn Shine statement, a little preview of a future project I got going on. So
I like the sound of all that. Make sure you look
see how that goes.
I like it. We're all huddled up, ready to check that out. Especially, listen, even here in Florida, it's cold. We're in the 40s. Damn it, this is ridiculous. So, Yeah, awesome work. Thank you for coming in, Shawn. Of course, I am Kyle Nash, the student of the game. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky. That's right, Shawn. I'm one of the cool kids. I have Blue Sky at the SOTG. Find me on Facebook as the student of the game. Check out my writings with the Fans First Sports Network. Listen, I am going entirely nuts dropping pieces there on the Fans First Sports Network. I have 2 today. Nobody knew Balky was getting parted with. It happened. Check out what I have to say about it. Also, my part about the coaching campaign raging on there with the Jaguars, despite the 3 main candidates having very interesting movement today. Make sure you check that out. Fans for Sports Network and the Jaguars section there too. Also, the Orlando Magic are a target of mine. Not today necessarily. I still got to get into what the heck happened there in Canada when they lost to the Raptors. And of course, the impending return of Franz Wagner for the Magic. I'll be on top of all that here in the week also for Fans First. Not to mention the Duval Dive with my guy, Travis D. Holmes. Go to the Duval Dive YouTube channel, see our reactions. If you don't like it there, make sure you check out the Duval Dive podcast. That'll get you what you need to know. And yeah, that too is powered by Fans First Sports Network. So make sure to enjoy that. Plus my work with the Black and Gold Banneret. I dropped a little bit of news and broke some news about a certain roster spot that changed on the women's basketball team. Make sure you check that out if that's your jam on the blackandgoldbanneret.com, plus the Night Shift podcast, talking all things UCF sport, me in particular, in reference to UCF football and basketball, men's and women's. That's all there. Check that out. Black and Gold Banneret YouTube channel, the Night Shift YouTube channel. Maybe changes in the air there as well. We're teasing an awful lot of things here tonight, but had a great time. What's that?
Said tons of things.
Tons of things. All the things, right? So, for the great Shawn Patrick, a.k.a. the Evil Twin, I am Kyle Nash, the student of the game. Until next time, everyone, class dismiss.